While I was babysitting my grandson Caleb, he suddenly pointed at an old photograph on the shelf. His little finger trembled as he whispered, "She told me not to tell you." My chest tightened. The photo was of his mother, Rachel, who had passed away years ago. I bent down so I was eye level with him and asked softly, "What did she say, Caleb?" He looked straight at me, his eyes wide with innocence, and replied, "She told me it's a secret." My heart skipped a beat. I held his tiny hand and said, "Then let's find out why, together." My name is Eleanor Whitman, but everyone calls me Ellie. I'm 56 years old, a widow, and the proud grandmother of Caleb, my only grandson. My days are quiet most of the time, filled with gardening, reading, and keeping the house in order. But the weekends are different. That's when Caleb comes over, and the house suddenly feels alive again. He fills the rooms with laughter, and for a little while, I forget the loneliness that settled in after my husband passed. That weekend, I was looking after him because my son, Daniel, had to travel for work. Daniel is a good man, a hard-working father, but ever since Rachel, his wife, died in that tragic accident, I've seen him carry a weight he never talks about. Caleb was only a baby when it happened, so he doesn't really remember her. But sometimes, when he asks me questions about his mother, I see the same sadness in his eyes that I see in Daniel's. My living room is filled with family pictures, from old black and white ones of my parents to colorful frames of birthdays and vacations. Caleb always pauses in front of one picture. It's a photo of Rachel holding him as a newborn, her face glowing with joy. That photo has always been bittersweet for me, a reminder of the love she had for him and the life that was cut too short. On that quiet afternoon, when Caleb whispered his strange words, everything I thought I knew about the past began to change. Caleb's words clung to me like a shadow. "She told me not to tell you." At first, I brushed it off as a child's imagination. He was only 6 years old after all, and children often say things they don't fully understand. But the seriousness in his tone, the way his small fingers pointed at that photograph, unsettled me. I sat beside him on the couch, the photo frame between us, and tried to keep my voice steady. "Who told you, Caleb?" I asked. He kept his eyes on the photo, as if afraid to look at me. "Mommy," he whispered. My stomach dropped. He had said mommy before when asking about Rachel, but never with this kind of certainty. That night, after Caleb had fallen asleep in the guest room, I sat alone in the living room, staring at the same photograph. My hands trembled as I held it, my thoughts racing back to the day Rachel died. A car accident, sudden and tragic, had taken her from us. Or so I was told. I had accepted it as truth all these years, comforting Daniel and helping him raise Caleb as best I could. But now, Caleb's words cracked something inside me. Could it be possible that there was more to her death than what we were told? The next morning, I asked Caleb again. I wanted to hear him repeat it, to make sure I hadn't misunderstood. "Sweetheart, when you said mommy told you not to tell me, what did you mean?" He fiddled with his cereal spoon, his brows furrowed like he was trying to find the right words. Finally, he said, "She talks to me at night. She says she misses me, but she says not to tell you, because it would make you sad." My hand froze halfway to the coffee cup. My pulse raced as I searched his face for signs of make-believe. But he was calm, steady, almost too serious for a child his age. I wanted to dismiss it as a dream, maybe his imagination filling in the gap left by Rachel's absence. But Caleb was not the kind of child to invent stories just for fun. He was thoughtful, quiet, and when he spoke, it was usually with intention. I felt a chill creep up my spine. What if this was more than just a child's fantasy? I decided not to say anything to Daniel just yet. He was already stretched thin with work and single fatherhood. Bringing this up without any clarity would only worry him. Still, I couldn't ignore it. For days, I found myself watching Caleb more closely. I noticed the way he sometimes stared off into space, as if listening to someone I couldn't hear. Once, I even caught him whispering in his room, and when I asked who he was talking to, he looked startled and mumbled, "Nobody." The conflict inside me grew heavier with each passing day. Part of me wanted to believe Caleb was only dreaming about his mother, that it was just his way of holding on to the memory of a woman he never got to know. But another part of me feared there was truth buried beneath his words, truth that I wasn't ready to face. One evening, as I tucked Caleb into bed, He clutched my hand and said, "Grandma, Mommy says you should check the box." My heart skipped. "What box, honey?" I asked. He shook his head. "I don't know. She just says you'll understand." My mind spun with confusion. There was no box I could think of, at least not one connected to Rachel. But his insistence made my chest tighten with unease. After he fell asleep, I walked through the house, trying to make sense of it. I opened closets, searched drawers, and even went into the basement, but nothing seemed out of the ordinary. Still, Caleb's words echoed in my mind. A box. Something Rachel wanted me to find. Something hidden. The next weekend, when Daniel came to pick Caleb up, I nearly told him everything, but as he stood in the doorway, tired eyes and worried face, I couldn't bring myself to add to his burdens. Instead, I hugged him tightly and whispered, "Take care of yourself." I knew this was something I had to uncover on my own. That night, I lay awake replaying Rachel's last days in my mind. She had been troubled before the accident, more withdrawn than usual, though she never shared why. I remembered how she sometimes lingered near the old cedar chest in the attic, the one that belonged to her grandmother. My breath caught. Could that be the box Caleb was talking about? The idea took root and refused to leave. The next day, I climbed into the attic, dust filling my lungs as I pulled the chain for the single dangling bulb. Shadows stretched across the floor, and there in the corner sat the cedar chest. My hands shook as I approached it, Caleb's words pounding in my ears. "Check the box." I knelt before it, heart hammering, and lifted the lid. Inside lay old blankets, photo albums, and keepsakes from years past. At first, it seemed ordinary, but as I dug deeper, my fingers brushed against something cold and metallic tucked beneath a stack of books. I pulled it out slowly, my breath caught in my throat. It was a small locked tin box, weathered and heavy. My pulse quickened. Rachel had hidden something here, and somehow, through Caleb, she was urging me to find it. The tin box sat in my lap, its weight far heavier than its size suggested. My hands trembled as I turned it over, looking for a way in. The lock was old, but still sturdy, and I knew I couldn't force it open without risking damage. I set it on the table beside me, my mind racing with questions. What had Rachel hidden here? Why did she want Caleb to guide me to it? And most of all, did I really want to know the truth it contained? For hours, I stared at that box. Every time I reached for it, I pulled back, fear tightening my chest. The unknown had always frightened me less than the possibility of uncovering something I couldn't handle. But the memory of Caleb's small voice, so certain and so serious, gave me courage. He wasn't making this up. Somehow, Rachel was reaching out, and I couldn't ignore it. The following day, I decided to search through Rachel's old belongings. Maybe, just maybe, she had left a clue. I pulled out the cardboard boxes in the attic, filled with her notebooks, journals, and scraps of writing. Most of it was the ordinary musings of a young mother. Shopping lists, letters she never mailed, pages of dreams she had once hoped to chase. But then, I found one entry that stopped me cold. It was dated just 3 days before the accident. Her handwriting was hurried, as if written in fear. "If something happens to me, the truth is in the box. Only Mom will know what to do." The words made my breath hitch. "The truth is in the box." I whispered them aloud, and suddenly the tin in my hands felt more dangerous than before. Rachel had known something. She had expected something might happen. My hands shook as I folded the paper and tucked it into my pocket, my resolve hardening. I couldn't ignore this anymore. I took the box to the locksmith in town, an older man named Frank, who had known our family for years. He raised an eyebrow when I set it on his counter. "Antique, huh? These are tricky, but not impossible. You sure you want it opened?" His words struck me with eerie weight, but I nodded firmly. "Yes, I need to know what's inside." He worked in silence, his tools clicking softly against the metal. My heart pounded with every turn of his pick, until finally there was a sharp click and the lock released. Frank slid the box back toward me. "There you go. Whatever's in there, it's been waiting a long time." I thanked him with a smile that didn't quite reach my eyes and hurried home, the box tucked tightly under my arm. At my kitchen table, I lifted the lid. The hinges groaned as if protesting, and inside lay a bundle of folded papers tied with a ribbon. Beneath them was a flash drive, old but intact, and a few photographs that immediately caught my breath. They weren't family photos. They were pictures of Rachel standing with a man I didn't recognize, looking frightened, almost cornered. In one photo, the man had his arm gripping her wrist, and the fear in her eyes told me everything I needed to know. Rachel had been in trouble. My hands shook as I untied the ribbon around the papers. The first was a letter addressed to me. Mom, if you're reading this, then something has gone wrong. I didn't know who else to trust but you. I've been threatened, and I'm scared for Caleb. Please protect him. The box has evidence. Don't let them silence me. I had to set the letter down, my vision swimming with tears. Rachel hadn't died in a simple accident. She had known she was in danger, and the fact that she left this for me meant she had been trying to leave a trail, a safeguard for her son. I felt my chest tighten with a mix of grief, anger, and determination. The photographs, the letter, and the flash drive, all of it pointed to a hidden truth. But the thought that terrified me most was the question of who had threatened her. My mind cycled through possibilities, but one face kept intruding: Daniel's brother, Mark. He had always hovered around the family with a strange possessiveness, and I remembered how his temper flared in ways that unsettled Rachel. Could it have been him? I pressed my hand against the table, steadying myself. This was the turning point. The moment I either chose to bury the box back in the attic and pretend I never found it, or to step into the dangerous path Rachel had left for me. But then I remembered Caleb, his innocent eyes looking up at me, trusting me to make sense of it all. For his sake, for Rachel's memory, I couldn't turn away. I packed the items neatly back into the tin and hid it under the floorboard in my bedroom. I didn't know yet what the flash drive contained, but I knew it held answers. Answers that could either heal us or destroy what little peace we had left. As I looked out the window at Caleb playing in the yard, my resolve hardened. I would uncover the truth, no matter the cost. That night, for the first time in years, I prayed out loud. Rachel, if you can hear me, I promise you this. I will protect your son, and I will finish what you started. The next morning, I waited until Caleb was at school before I pulled the tin box from its hiding place beneath the floorboard. My hands shook as I slid the flash drive into my laptop. For a few seconds, the screen stayed black, and I almost hoped it wouldn't work. But then, a folder popped open, filled with files Rachel had carefully stored away. Each one was dated, organized, as though she had been preparing for someone, me, to find them one day. The first file I opened was a video. Rachel sat at her kitchen table, her hair pulled back, her eyes red as if she'd been crying. Mom, she whispered into the camera, if you're seeing this, I didn't make it. Something happened to me, and it wasn't an accident. I've been threatened for months. I don't know who I can trust anymore, but I know you'll protect Caleb. That's why I kept everything. Photos, letters, even recordings. Please don't let them get away with this. Her voice cracked on the last words, and I clutched my chest, gasping for breath. The pain of hearing her speak from beyond the grave cut deeper than anything I'd ever felt. But beneath the grief was something sharper: anger. Whoever had hurt her thought they could silence her forever, but she had left me the truth. I clicked through the next files. One was a series of emails between Rachel and a lawyer I didn't recognize. The subject line repeated over and over: inheritance dispute. My stomach tightened as I read the words. Rachel had written that she was being harassed about Daniel's estate after his passing, pressured to sign papers she didn't understand. The lawyer advised her to be cautious and suggested that someone close to the family might be involved. Then I opened another folder. This one contained audio recordings. My fingers trembled as I pressed play, and a familiar voice filled the room. You think you can keep this house? You think you can just sit on what Daniel built? The voice was sharp, menacing, and unmistakable. It was Mark, my brother-in-law. Rachel's reply was faint. It's Caleb's home. Daniel wanted us to be safe here. Mark's laugh was bitter. Daniel's gone. That boy will grow up, and everything will come to me anyway. Sign the papers, Rachel, or you'll regret it. I paused the recording, my heart pounding so hard it echoed in my ears. Every suspicion I'd carried about Mark was confirmed in a single moment. He had threatened her. He had made her life unbearable, and I could no longer see her death as an accident. The final file I opened was a scanned document. It was Daniel's will, the original copy. My hands flew to my mouth as I read it. Everything, every asset, every property, every account, was left to Rachel and Caleb. Not a single word about Mark. My husband had deliberately excluded his brother. But if Mark had gotten his hands on this document, he would have known he had nothing, and that rage must have consumed him. I sat back in my chair, my hands trembling. Suddenly, Rachel's last words in her journal made perfect sense. Only Mom will know what to do. She had trusted me to stand against him, to use this evidence to protect her son. That night, when Mark came pounding at my door again, I didn't shrink back the way I used to. I opened it, and he stood there with that same smug expression. "Eleanor, this charade has gone on long enough," he said. "This house is mine. Caleb is mine. You're too old to fight this battle." For a moment, fear gripped me, but then I thought of Rachel's trembling voice in that video, her plea for me to protect her son. I straightened my back and looked Mark in the eye. "This house is Daniel's gift to his wife and son. I have the proof, and if you ever step foot here again, the police will have more than enough reason to put you away." His smirk faltered, just slightly. "You're bluffing." I didn't move. "Try me. I have your threats recorded. I have the will, and I have Rachel's words. Do you really want to test how fast this can end your life outside of prison walls?" For the first time, I saw fear flicker in his eyes. He turned away, muttering something under his breath, but he didn't push past me. He walked down the steps and out to his car, slamming the door behind him. I watched his taillights fade into the distance, my hands still trembling, but my heart steady with resolve. The box, the evidence, Rachel's voice. It had all led to this moment. I hadn't just uncovered the truth, I had faced it head on. And though I knew Mark might not give up so easily, I also knew he could no longer dismiss me as weak. I wasn't just a grieving mother anymore. I was a protector, a fighter, and Rachel's last line of defense. As I closed the door that night, I whispered into the quiet, "I kept my promise, Rachel. He won't take Caleb. He won't take this home." And for the first time in years, I felt a fragile, glowing sense of peace. The house was quiet after Mark left that night, but it wasn't the same kind of quiet that had haunted me for years. This time, it felt like a silence earned, a moment where Rachel's voice no longer echoed in fear, but in victory. I locked the door and stood in the living room, my hands resting on the back of a chair, steadying myself. For the first time since Rachel's death, I wasn't just surviving, I was standing for something bigger than my... The next morning, I called a lawyer, someone who had no connection to Mark or the family. I laid everything on the table, the recordings, the email, the copy of Daniel's will. The lawyer listened carefully, his eyes widening as he scrolled through the evidence. "Eleanor," he said firmly, "this is enough to not only protect you and Caleb, but to build a case if Mark tries anything again. You don't need to live in fear anymore." Hearing those words lifted a weight from my shoulders. For years, Mark had loomed over us like a storm cloud, always threatening, always ready to strike. But now, the balance had shifted. I wasn't powerless anymore, and more importantly, Caleb wasn't defenseless. When Caleb came home from school that day, I decided it was time to share some of the truth with him. I couldn't give him every detail. He was still so young, but he deserved to know that his mother had been brave, that she had fought for him until the end. I sat him down at the kitchen table, his small fingers fidgeting with the edge of his homework folder. "Caleb," I began gently, "you remember how you told me about the photo? How your mom said not to tell me something?" He nodded slowly, his wide eyes watching me. "Well," I said, my voice trembling but steady, "your mom left me some things. She wanted me to protect you, to make sure you always had a safe home. And I want you to know that she loved you more than anything in this world. She was strong, Caleb, and now we're strong too, because we're standing together." He didn't say much, but he leaned into me, his head resting against my arm. That small act told me more than words ever could. He understood in his own way, and he trusted me to keep him safe. That was all I needed. Over the next few weeks, I focused on rebuilding a sense of normalcy. I repaired the garden Rachel had once tended, letting Caleb help plant flowers where weeds had taken over. We hung some of Rachel's photos around the house, not as reminders of loss, but as celebrations of her life. Each smile captured in those frames became a source of strength, a reminder that love could outlast even the darkest betrayal. Mark didn't return, though I knew he wasn't gone for good. Men like him didn't just disappear, but this time I was ready. I had lawyers, I had evidence, and I had a renewed sense of purpose. Most importantly, I had Caleb, and I refused to let fear steal his childhood the way it had stolen my daughter's peace. Late one evening, as Caleb slept upstairs, I sat on the porch watching the sunset paint the sky in warm oranges and pinks. For years, I had dreaded the nights when memories came rushing back and loneliness took over. But now, as I watched the fading light, I felt something different, calm. I thought about Rachel's last words in her video, about her plea for me not to let them win. I whispered softly into the night air, "We did it, Rachel. He didn't take us down." The biggest lesson I carried from all of it wasn't just about resilience. It was about the quiet power of love, the kind that doesn't fade when someone is gone, but instead grows stronger in their absence. Rachel had trusted me to protect Caleb, and in doing so, she had given me a reason to keep living, to keep fighting. In the end, it wasn't just about defending a house or an inheritance. It was about honoring a promise. A mother's love had reached beyond her own life, guiding me to uncover the truth, and in return, I had passed that strength onto her son. Caleb wouldn't grow up in the shadow of fear. He would grow up knowing that his mother loved him fiercely and that his grandmother fought for him with everything she had. As I turned off the porch light and stepped inside, I felt the house wrap around me. Not as a burden, not as a reminder of grief, but as a home, a place of safety, a place where Rachel's memory lived on. Not in whispers of fear, but in the laughter of a little boy who still had a future. And as I closed the door for the night, I carried with me the unshakable truth. Love, when fiercely protected, becomes a shield strong enough to outlast any storm.